The thunder rolled across the valley as Olivia O'Malley clutched her 6-month-old son to her chest, rainwater streaming down her face and mixing with tears of desperation. The boarding house door had slammed in her face moments before, the landlady's words still ringing in her ears. "We don't rent to unmarried mothers in this town. It ain't proper, and everyone knows you ain't fit to raise that child alone." Cripple Creek, Colorado had promised a fresh start in 1885, away from the whispers and judgment of her hometown after Thomas had abandoned her upon learning of her pregnancy. The gold mining boom had drawn people from all walks of life to this mountain town, but apparently not those in her particular situation. 3 days of seeking shelter, 3 days of rejection, and now a punishing spring storm. "Hush now, Michael," she whispered to her whimpering son, pulling her threadbare shawl over his tiny form. The mining town's main street had emptied quickly when the storm hit, leaving her alone with nowhere to turn. Her meager savings would soon run out, and the stagecoach wouldn't return for another week. "Madam, you shouldn't be out in this weather," a deep voice called from behind her. Olivia turned to see a tall man on horseback, his face partially hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Water poured off the brim as he dismounted with ease that spoke of a lifetime in the saddle. "I don't have much choice," she replied, her voice carrying a defiance that surprised even herself. Pride was a luxury she could ill afford, but it was one of the few possessions she had left. The man stepped closer, and she could see his face now weathered by sun and wind, but kind eyes that assessed her situation quickly. "Name's Quentin Nash," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "I run the Broken Spur Ranch just outside town. Got plenty of room and a warm fire." His eyes fell to the bundle in her arms. "For both of you." "I'm not looking for charity, Mr. Nash," Olivia said, even as Michael let out another cry, louder this time. "And I'm not offering it," he replied simply. "What I am offering is basic human decency during a thunderstorm." Lightning cracked overhead as if to emphasize his point. "Besides, seems to me that little one has more sense than either of us, standing here arguing in this downpour." Olivia hesitated. Her mother had always warned her about the dangers of trusting strangers, especially men. But the rain was turning to hail now, and Michael's cries were growing more frantic. "I can pay," she insisted. A faint smile crossed Quentin's face. "We can discuss that when you're both dry." He whistled and his horse stepped forward. "Can you ride? It's been years, but yes." Quentin nodded, helping her mount before handing Michael up to her and swinging into the saddle behind them. His arms reached around to take the reins, creating a protected space for Olivia and the baby. "Hold on tight," he instructed, and then they were moving through the rain-slicked streets toward the edge of town. The ride took nearly half an hour, the driving rain making visibility poor. Olivia felt Michael finally quiet in her arms, soothed by the steady rhythm of the horse beneath them, and the warmth of being sheltered between her body and Quentin's chest. When the ranch house finally came into view, Olivia's exhaustion nearly overwhelmed her. It was larger than she had expected, a 2-story structure with a wide porch and warm light glowing from several windows. As they approached, the front door burst open and a young boy of about 10 dashed out onto the porch. "Mr. Nash, you're back." The boy called out, then froze when he spotted Olivia and the baby. "Who are they?" Quentin dismounted first, then reached up to help Olivia down. "Guests, Samuel. Run and tell Mrs. Wilkins to prepare the east room and get some hot water ready." The boy nodded and disappeared back inside. Quentin led the way, taking them through the front door into a spacious main room where a fire roared in the hearth. An older woman with silver-streaked hair bustled in, drying her hands on her apron. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of Olivia and the baby, but she recovered quickly. "Mrs. Wilkins, this is—" Quentin paused, turning to Olivia with raised eyebrows. "Olivia O'Malley," she supplied, "and this is my son, Michael. They'll be staying with us for a while," Quentin explained in a tone that brooked no argument. "The East Room should suit them fine." "Of course, Mrs. Wilkins said, already moving toward Olivia. "You poor dear, you're soaked through. Come along, we need to get you both into dry clothes before you catch your death." As Mrs. Wilkins ushered her away, Olivia glanced back at Quentin, who stood watching them, water still dripping from his coat onto the wooden floor. "Thank you, Mr. Nash," he nodded once. "Get some rest, Miss O'Malley. We'll talk in the morning." The East Room was simple but comfortable, with a double bed, a small crib that Mrs. Wilkins explained had belonged to Quentin's sister's children, and a chest of drawers. After both Olivia and Michael were bathed and dressed in borrowed clothes, Olivia in a plain cotton nightgown that Mrs. Wilkins said had belonged to the previous Mrs. Nash, the older woman brought up a tray with hot stew and fresh bread. "Mr. Nash said to make sure you eat," she explained, setting the tray down. "He also said not to worry about anything tonight, just rest." "Mrs. Wilkins," Olivia began hesitantly, "may I ask about the previous Mrs. Nash?" The housekeeper's expression softened. "Elizabeth. She passed during a fever outbreak 4 years ago. They'd been married just 2 years." "I'm sorry," Olivia said, her heart aching for the man who had shown her such unexpected kindness. "He's a good man," Mrs. Wilkins said, as if reading her thoughts. "Took in Samuel and 3 other orphans from town after the same fever took their parents, raised them like his own, he has." After Mrs. Wilkins left, Olivia ate quickly, her hunger surprising her. With Michael settled in the crib, she sank into the bed, her body aching with exhaustion. Questions about what tomorrow would bring tumbled through her mind, but the comfort of the bed and the rhythmic sound of rain against the windows soon lulled her into a deep sleep. Morning brought clarity, and with it, the return of Olivia's pride. She dressed Michael in his now clean clothes and put on her own simple dress, determined to thank Quentin Nash for his hospitality and be on her way. She couldn't stay here in this house with this stranger, no matter how kind he seemed. When she descended the stairs, she found the main room empty except for a girl of about 15 who was sweeping the floor. "Good morning," the girl said cheerfully. "I'm Emma. You must be Miss O'Malley. Mrs. Wilkins said you'd be joining us for breakfast." "Actually, I was hoping to speak with Mr. Nash," Olivia said, adjusting Michael on her hip. "He's in the barn with the boys, but he'll be in shortly," Emma replied, setting aside her broom. "Can I hold the baby while you eat? I'm ever so good with little ones." Before Olivia could respond, the front door opened and Quentin entered, followed by Samuel and 2 other boys, one around 13 and another who appeared to be 17 or so. All 4 were engaged in animated conversation about a new foal, but they fell silent when they noticed Olivia. "Miss O'Malley," Quentin said, removing his hat. "I trust you slept well." "Very well, thank you," she replied. "Mr. Nash, I appreciate your kindness last night, but Michael and I should be on our way." "On your way where exactly?" he asked, his direct gaze making her uncomfortable. "Back to town. I'll find accommodations." "No, you won't," he said matter-of-factly. "I was in the Mercantile this morning. Word's already spread about the fallen woman with a bastard child seeking rooms. No one in Cripple Creek will rent to you now." Olivia felt her face flush with anger and humiliation. "Then we'll take the next stagecoach out." "That's not due for 5 more days," Quentin reminded her. He glanced at the boys who were watching the exchange with undisguised interest. "Samuel, take your brothers and help Emma set the table." Mrs. Wilkins says breakfast is nearly ready. Once they were alone, Quentin gestured to a pair of chairs by the fire. Please sit, I have a proposition for you. Reluctantly, Olivia sat, cradling Michael close. I need help around here, Quentin began. Mrs. Wilkins does her best, but she's getting on in years, and Emma has her hands full with her studies and helping with the younger children. I need someone to manage the household properly. You're offering me a job? Olivia asked, surprised. Room and board for you and your son, plus a fair wage, he confirmed. In return, you'd oversee the running of the house, including meals, laundry, and keeping the children in line. The children, Samuel, Henry, William, and Emma, he explained. All orphans, as Mrs. Wilkins probably told you. I've been raising them these past few years. Olivia studied him, trying to understand his motives. Why would you do this? You don't know anything about me. I know enough, he said simply. You're alone with a child, trying to make your way in a world that's determined to judge you for it. I respect that kind of courage. He paused. And I know what it's like to be alone when everyone else seems to have someone. Before she could respond, Mrs. Wilkins called them to breakfast. The meal was a boisterous affair, with the children peppering Olivia with questions about where she came from and how old Michael was. Even the oldest boy, William, seemed fascinated by the baby, offering to hold him while Olivia ate. Watching Quentin with the children, Olivia saw a different side to the quiet, serious man who had rescued her from the storm. He was patient with their endless questions, firm but gentle in his corrections, and clearly beloved by all of them. They weren't a conventional family, but they were a family nonetheless. After breakfast, when the children had dispersed to their chores and lessons, Olivia found Quentin on the front porch, gazing out at the mountains that rose majestically in the distance. I'll accept your offer, she said, joining him at the railing. For now, until I can make other arrangements, he nodded, not looking at her. Fair enough. But I have conditions, she continued, summoning her courage. I want to be treated with respect, not as a charity case. I want to contribute meaningfully to this household, and I want Michael to be treated as one of the family, not as. She hesitated. Not as a bastard, Quentin finished, his voice gentle despite the harsh word. Now he did turn to look at her, his expression serious. Miss O'Malley, in this house, we judge people by their actions, not by the circumstances of their birth or the mistakes of their past. Michael will be treated with the same love and respect as every other child under this roof. You have my word on that. The sincerity in his voice brought unexpected tears to Olivia's eyes. She blinked them away quickly, not wanting to appear weak. Then we have an agreement, Mr. Nash. Quentin, he corrected. If you're going to be running my household, I think we can dispense with formalities. Olivia then, she replied, offering her hand. He took it, his calloused palm warm against her skin. Welcome to the Broken Spur, Olivia O'Malley. The first few weeks at the ranch passed in a blur of activity as Olivia settled into her new role. The house, while well-maintained, needed a woman's touch, and she threw herself into organizing, cleaning, and establishing routines for the children. To her surprise, they accepted her authority with minimal resistance. Even William, who at 17 might have resented taking direction from a newcomer. Emma, in particular, seemed thrilled to have another woman in the house besides Mrs. Wilkins. She attached herself to Olivia, eager to help with Michael and to learn everything from cooking to sewing to managing a household. I want to be just like you when I'm grown, she confided one afternoon as they hung laundry together in the yard, Michael sleeping in a makeshift cradle nearby. Strong and independent, Olivia laughed softly. I'm not sure many would describe an unmarried mother as a proper role model, Emma. The girl shrugged, pinning a shirt to the line. Mr. Nash says that true character is shown in how you face adversity, not in whether you experience it. And he says you've got more grit than most men he knows. He said that, Olivia asked, surprised. He admires you, I can tell. Emma's eyes twinkled mischievously. And I think he finds you pretty too. Emma, Olivia felt her cheeks flush. That's hardly appropriate conversation. Why not? He's been alone since Mrs. Elizabeth died, and you're alone too. It makes sense. Before Olivia could formulate a response, they were interrupted by the sound of hoofbeats. Quentin rode into the yard, followed by Henry and Samuel, all three returning from checking the herd in the north pasture. "Ladies," Quentin greeted them, dismounting with fluid grace. His eyes lingered on Olivia for a moment before shifting to the sleeping baby. "How's our little man today?" "Growing stronger by the day," Olivia replied, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach at his use of "our." It was just a figure of speech, she told herself. Good, he'll need his strength in this family. Quentin smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. "Mrs. Wilkins mentioned you're planning a special dinner tonight. It's Samuel's birthday tomorrow," Olivia explained. "I thought we might celebrate a bit early since you said you'd be riding to the Peterson place tomorrow." Something warm flashed in Quentin's eyes. "That's thoughtful of you." "Samuel will be pleased." Later that evening, after a festive dinner complete with a cake Olivia had baked, she found herself alone with Quentin on the porch again. The children were inside, playing a boisterous game of charades under Mrs. Wilkins's watchful eye, and Michael had fallen asleep after his evening feeding. "You've been good for this household," Quentin said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "I haven't seen the children this happy in a long time." "They're wonderful children," Olivia replied. "You've done a remarkable job with them." He shook his head slightly. "I've provided for them, given them a home, but there are things they need that I can't give them. Such as a mother's touch, the kind of love that—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Elizabeth and I always planned to have children of our own. After she died, taking in the orphans seemed like the right thing to do, but I've always wondered if they're missing something essential by being raised by a bachelor rancher." Olivia considered his words carefully. "Children need love, stability, and guidance. From what I've seen, you've provided all three in abundance." "Maybe," he conceded, "but seeing you with them these past weeks has shown me what they've been missing. The way Emma lights up when you teach her something new. How Samuel follows you around like a puppy. Even William seems more settled since you arrived." "They just needed a feminine presence," Olivia said, trying to downplay her contribution. "Mrs. Wilkins has been a wonderful influence too." "It's more than that," Quentin insisted. "It's you, Olivia. Your kindness, your patience, your strength." The sincerity in his voice made her heart skip a beat, and for a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to stay here permanently, to be part of this unconventional family, to perhaps even be more to Quentin than just his housekeeper. But reality intruded quickly. "You're very kind," she said stiffly, rising from her chair. "But I should check on Michael." Quentin stood as well, looking as if he wanted to say more but thought better of it. "Of course. Good night, Olivia." "Good night, Quentin." As spring deepened into summer, Olivia found herself becoming more entwined with life at the Broken Spur. The lines between employer and employee blurred as she took on more responsibility not just for the house, but for the children's education and welfare. Quentin began consulting her on decisions regarding the ranch operations, valuing her practical intelligence and common sense. For his part, Quentin seemed to be making an effort to spend more time at home rather than out on the range. He started joining them for all three meals, helped Emma with her reading in the evenings, and even took to rocking Michael to sleep when Olivia had other tasks to complete. It was after one such evening, when Olivia entered the parlor to find Quentin singing softly to Michael while the other children played checkers nearby, that she realized she was falling in love with him. The realization terrified her. She had trusted a man once before, and it had led to heartbreak and shame. Could she risk it again? Moreover, what would people say? Quentin Nash was respected in Cripple Creek, a successful rancher and a man of integrity. Associating himself romantically with a woman of her reputation could damage that standing irreparably. These thoughts preoccupied her as July turned to August, and the heat of summer made the days long and the work harder. Quentin and the boys spent more time tending to the cattle, ensuring they had enough water in the drought that had settled over the region. It was during this time that disaster struck. William, riding out alone to check on a distant section of the herd, was thrown from his horse when it stepped in a prairie dog hole. By the time Quentin found him, the boy had been lying in the sun for hours, his leg clearly broken and his skin burning with fever. The doctor was summoned from town, but his prognosis was grim. "It's a bad break," he told them after examining William in the boy's bedroom, "and he's developing an infection. The next few days will be critical." For 3 days and nights, Olivia and Quentin took turns sitting with William, bathing his forehead with cool cloths, trying to get him to take sips of water or broth, and praying for the fever to break. The other children moved about the house in hushed silence, fear etched on their young faces. On the third night, Olivia was dozing in the chair beside William's bed when she felt a hand on her shoulder. She looked up to find Quentin standing over her, his face drawn with exhaustion and worry. "You need to rest properly," he said softly. "I'll sit with him." "I'm fine," she protested, but a yawn betrayed her. "Olivia, please. You've barely slept in days. Michael needs you at your best, and so do the others." She knew he was right. Rising from the chair, she made to leave but stopped at the door, turning back to watch as Quentin took her place, gently adjusting the blanket over William's restless form. The tenderness in the gesture made her throat tighten with emotion. "Quentin," she said impulsively. "He's going to be all right. He's strong like you." Quentin looked up, his eyes red-rimmed but determined. "I can't lose him, Olivia. I can't lose any of them. They're all I have." The raw vulnerability in his voice drew her back into the room. Without thinking, she knelt beside his chair and took his hand in hers. "You won't lose him, and they're not all you have. You have me." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning neither of them was ready to fully acknowledge. Quentin's fingers tightened around hers, and for a long moment, they simply held on to each other in the dim light of the sick room. The next morning, William's fever broke. By afternoon, he was awake and asking for food, though the doctor warned it would be weeks before he could put weight on his injured leg. The relief that washed through the household was palpable, as if everyone had been holding their breath and could finally exhale. That evening, after the younger children were in bed and Mrs. Wilkins had retired for the night, Olivia found Quentin on the porch again, a glass of whiskey in his hand as he stared out at the star-filled sky. "May I join you?" she asked softly. He nodded, gesturing to the chair beside his. They sat in companionable silence for several minutes before he spoke. "I thought about what you said last night," he began, his voice low. "About me having you." Olivia's heart began to race, but she kept her expression neutral. "I meant as a friend, of course. Did you?" He turned to look at her directly, his gaze intense. "Because I've been thinking lately that I'd like to have you as more than that." She swallowed hard. "Quentin, you know my situation, my past. Your past is your own," he interrupted. "I'm interested in your future, our future perhaps." The town already talks about me, she pointed out. If we, it would reflect poorly on you. Quentin set his glass down with a decisive movement. Olivia O'Malley, do I strike you as a man who cares overmuch about town gossip? Despite her nervousness, she smiled. No, you don't. Good, because I don't. What I care about is this family we've been building together. These past few months, watching you with Michael, with the children, seeing the way you've brought life and warmth back into this house. It's made me realize what I've been missing, what we've all been missing. He reached for her hand, his touch sending a current of warmth through her. I'm not asking for anything right now except the chance to court you properly, to see if what I feel, what I think we both feel, might grow into something lasting. Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. And Michael? You'd be taking on another man's child. Michael is a part of you, Quentin said simply. I already care for him as much as I care for any of the children in this house. More in some ways, because he's given me the chance to know what it might be like to raise a child from infancy. The sincerity in his voice was Olivia's undoing. The walls she had built around her heart since Thomas's betrayal began to crumble. I'm afraid, she admitted. The last time I trusted a man with my heart, he left me to face the consequences alone. I'm not that man, Quentin said, his voice fervent. I would never abandon you or Michael, or any child we might have together. The implication of his words, a future where they might have children of their own, sent a flood of emotion through Olivia. For so long, she had resigned herself to raising Michael alone, to never experiencing the joy of a loving marriage or the completeness of a true family. Now, suddenly, that future seemed possible again. Yes, she whispered, her voice catching. Yes, I'd like to see where this might lead. The smile that broke across Quentin's face was like the sunrise, transforming his features. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward until his lips met hers in a gentle, questioning kiss. Olivia responded with a tentative pressure of her own, her hand rising to rest against his chest, feeling the strong beat of his heart beneath her palm. When they pulled apart, Quentin kept her hand in his thumb tracing circles on her skin. I should warn you, he said, his voice lighter now, courting me means courting 4 opinionated children as well. Olivia laughed softly. I think I can handle them. It's you I'm not so sure about, Mr. Nash. His eyes twinkled. Fair enough, Miss O'Malley, fair enough. Word of their courtship spread quickly through the small community of Cripple Creek. Some reactions were supportive. The doctor, who had come to respect Olivia during William's illness, offered his congratulations, as did the minister who had always treated her with kindness, despite her status as an unwed mother. Others were less charitable. The women who had turned Olivia away during the storm now whispered behind their hands when she accompanied Quentin into town for supplies. Several of Quentin's business associates expressed concern that he was being taken in by a woman of questionable virtue. These reactions hurt Olivia deeply, though she tried not to let it show. She had hoped that by proving herself a hard worker and a devoted mother, she might eventually win acceptance in the community. Now, it seemed that her past would always define her in the eyes of many. Quentin, for his part, responded to the gossip with a cold fury that surprised Olivia. When the owner of the mercantile made a snide comment about Olivia's character within Quentin's hearing, the rancher calmly informed the man that he would be taking his considerable business elsewhere, unless a proper apology was forthcoming. The apology came the next day, delivered to the ranch by the man's chastened son. You shouldn't have done that, Olivia admonished Quentin afterward. We need the mercantile. What we need, Quentin replied firmly, is to be treated with basic human decency. I won't have anyone disrespecting you or Michael, not if they want my business or my friendship. His unwavering support strengthened Olivia's own resolve. She began to hold her head higher when they went to town together, to meet the stares with a direct gaze of her own. And gradually, as the weeks passed and their courtship continued, some of the opposition began to soften. It helped that the children were so clearly thriving under Olivia's care, their clothes neat, their manners improved, their schoolwork progressing admirably. By the time autumn painted the aspen groves around the ranch in shades of gold, Olivia had begun to feel truly at home at the Broken Spur. Michael was crawling now, a robust, happy baby adored by his adopted siblings. William's leg had healed well enough for him to return to light duties, and Emma was blossoming under Olivia's guidance, showing a talent for teaching that suggested she might pursue it as a vocation when she was older. On a crisp October evening, Quentin surprised Olivia by asking Mrs. Wilkins to watch the children while he took her for a drive in the buggy. They followed a winding path up into the foothills, the horses moving steadily until they reached a high meadow overlooking the valley where the ranch lay. The view was breathtaking. The ranch buildings looked like toys from this height, and beyond them, the town of Cripple Creek nestled in its own valley, with the majestic Rocky Mountains rising in the background, their peaks already dusted with early snow. "This is beautiful," Olivia said as Quentin helped her down from the buggy. "I've never seen the ranch from this perspective before." "It's my favorite spot," Quentin replied, spreading a blanket on the ground and inviting her to sit. From a basket in the buggy, he produced a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "My father brought me here when I was a boy to show me what he was working to build. He told me that someday all of this would be mine to protect and nurture." Olivia accepted the glass he offered, taking a small sip of the sweet wine. "He would be proud of what you've accomplished." "I hope so," Quentin said thoughtfully. "But lately I've been thinking that a legacy isn't just about land and cattle, it's about family. About passing on values and love to the next generation." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "Olivia O'Malley, these past months have been the happiest of my life. I can't imagine my future or the future of the Broken Spur without you in it." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant gold ring set with a small diamond. "This was my mother's. I'd be honored if you would wear it as my wife." Emotion welled up in Olivia's throat, making speech impossible for a moment. She stared at the ring, then at Quentin's hopeful face, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. "Quentin," she finally managed, "are you certain I'm not? I don't come from money or position. I have a child born out of wedlock. People will talk." "Let them talk," he said firmly. "What matters is what we know, that you're the strongest, kindest, most loving woman I've ever known. That Michael deserves a father who will cherish him as his own son. That the children need a mother who will guide them with the same gentle hand you've shown these past months." He took her free hand in his. "That I love you, Olivia, completely and without reservation." The words she had longed to hear yet feared might never come washed over her like a healing balm. "I love you too," she whispered, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, Quentin, yes, I'll marry you." His face lit with joy as he slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms for a kiss that promised a lifetime of love and partnership. When they finally separated, breathless and smiling, the sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in vivid pinks and oranges. "When?" Olivia asked, admiring how the diamond caught the fading light. "When shall we marry?" "As soon as possible," Quentin replied fervently. "Before winter sets in, if the minister can arrange it, unless you want more time to prepare." Olivia shook her head. "No, I've waited long enough for happiness. I don't want to delay it a day longer than necessary." They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with only the children, Mrs. Wilkins, the doctor, and the minister and his wife as witnesses. Olivia wore a new dress of deep blue silk that Quentin had ordered specially from Denver, with Emma proudly serving as her bridesmaid. Michael, now 9 months old, was held by Mrs. Wilkins during the ceremony, his happy babbling providing an occasional counterpoint to the minister's solemn words. When Quentin slipped a gold band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, and the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Olivia felt a sense of completeness she had never experienced before. As Quentin kissed her to seal their vows, the small gathering erupted in applause, led by an enthusiastic Samuel. The celebration that followed was joyful if modest, a special dinner prepared by Mrs. Wilkins, a cake baked by Emma under Olivia's guidance, and music provided by Henry on the fiddle he was learning to play. As twilight fell, the children presented the newlyweds with a gift they had made together, a family portrait drawn by William, who had a talent for sketching, framed in wood that Samuel had carefully sanded and finished. The portrait showed all of them together, Quentin and Olivia in the center with Michael on her lap, the 4 older children arranged around them, and even Mrs. Wilkins included at the edge. Beneath it, William had written in careful script, "The Nash Family, 1885. "It's perfect," Olivia said, her voice thick with emotion as she hugged each child in turn. "The most beautiful gift I could imagine." Later, after the children had finally been persuaded to go to bed and Mrs. Wilkins had retired to her room, Quentin led Olivia to the master bedroom, now their bedroom, where a fire burned warmly in the grate and fresh flowers adorned the dresser. "Welcome home, Mrs. Nash," he said softly, drawing her into his arms. The winter that followed was the happiest of Olivia's life. The Broken Spur became truly her home as she and Quentin settled into married life, their love deepening with each passing day. Michael thrived under the attention of his new father and siblings, taking his first steps just before Christmas to the delight of the entire household. The children, too, blossomed with the stability of having 2 parents. William began to talk of attending college in Denver, a dream Quentin enthusiastically supported. Emma's talent for teaching led to her helping the younger boys with their studies, while Henry's musical abilities continued to develop. Even Samuel, the most rambunctious of the group, showed a newfound maturity as he took on more responsibility around the ranch. Not everything was perfect, of course. There were arguments and misunderstandings, as in any family. Olivia sometimes struggled to balance her duties as a wife, mother, and household manager. Quentin occasionally retreated into silence when problems with the ranch weighed on him, a habit Olivia gently but persistently worked to change. But through it all, their love remained steadfast, a foundation upon which they built their life together. Spring brought new life to the ranch in more ways than one. The cattle began calving, the garden Olivia had planned over the winter took shape, and in April, she discovered that she was expecting a child of her own, hers and Quentin's. When she shared the news with him one evening after the children were asleep, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. Joy illuminated his features as he lifted her in a careful embrace, spinning her around before setting her gently back on her feet. "A baby," he whispered, his hand coming to rest reverently on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." "Are you pleased?" she asked, though his reaction had already answered her question. "Beyond words," he assured her, kissing her tenderly. "Though not surprised, we've certainly been enthusiastic in our marital duties." Olivia blushed at his teasing reference to their passionate nights together. "Quentin," he laughed, pulling her close again. "How are you feeling? Do you need anything? Should I ride for the doctor?" "I'm fine," she assured him, touched by his concern. It's early days yet. The baby won't arrive until late autumn. They decided to wait to share the news with the children, wanting to be sure all was well with the pregnancy first. But as May turned to June and Olivia's condition became more noticeable, they gathered the family in the parlor after dinner one evening. "We have something important to tell you all," Quentin began, his arm around Olivia's shoulders. "Something wonderful. You're having a baby." Emma blurted out, unable to contain herself. At Olivia's startled look, she explained, "I've noticed you've been tired lately and a bit sick in the mornings, and your dresses are getting tighter." Olivia laughed, sharing an amused glance with Quentin. "Yes, Emma, you're right. We're expecting a baby in November." The reactions varied. Emma was ecstatic, immediately peppering Olivia with questions about names and whether she hoped for a boy or girl. William offered quiet congratulations, his maturity showing in his understanding of what this meant for the family. Henry seemed pleased but slightly confused about the logistics of where a new baby would fit in their household. Samuel's reaction, however, was unexpected. The 10-year-old's face clouded over, and he abruptly stood up and left the room without a word. "Samuel." Quentin called after him, but Olivia placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Let me talk to him," she said softly. "I think I understand." She found Samuel in the barn, aggressively brushing his pony, his small shoulders tense. "That's good care you're taking of Rusty," she commented, keeping her distance. Samuel didn't respond, continuing his vigorous brushing. "You know," Olivia continued conversationally, "when my mother told me she was expecting my little brother, I was quite upset. I thought it meant she wouldn't love me as much anymore." The brushing slowed slightly. "Is that what happened?" Samuel asked without looking at her. "No," Olivia replied honestly. "She loved us both differently but equally, just as I love Michael and this new baby, and you, Samuel." Now he did turn, his young face troubled. "But this baby will be yours and Mr. Nash's real child. Like Michael is your real child. We're just extras." Olivia's heart ached at his words. She crossed the barn and knelt beside him, ignoring the hay that would surely stain her dress. "Samuel Nash, listen to me carefully. Family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who shares your heart. You became my son the day I married your father, just as surely as Michael did. This new baby won't change that. Promise?" he asked, his voice small. "I promise," she said firmly, opening her arms. Samuel hesitated only a moment before flinging himself into her embrace, his small body shaking with suppressed sobs. Olivia held him close, stroking his hair and murmuring reassurances until he calmed. When they returned to the house, hand in hand, Quentin was waiting anxiously on the porch. The relief on his face when he saw them together brought a warm smile to Olivia's lips. "Everything all right?" he asked, looking from one to the other. Samuel nodded, still holding Olivia's hand. "Mrs. Nash explained things. I'm going to be a big brother again." "That you are," Quentin agreed, ruffling the boy's hair affectionately. "And a fine one, too." As Samuel ran inside to rejoin his siblings, Quentin pulled Olivia into a gentle embrace. "Thank you," he murmured against her hair. "For understanding him, for loving them all so well." "They're easy to love," she replied simply. "They're ours." The summer passed in a haze of contentment as Olivia's pregnancy progressed. The ranch prospered under Quentin's careful management, and the children thrived in the stable, loving environment he and Olivia had created together. Even the town's attitude toward Olivia had begun to shift. Her marriage to Quentin had given her a respectable status, of course, but it was more than that. As people observed her dedication to her family, her kindness to neighbors in need, and her quiet dignity in the face of gossip, many who had once shunned her now sought her friendship. The transformation was most evident when complications arose in Olivia's pregnancy in late August. She began experiencing sharp pains and bleeding, terrifying both her and Quentin. The doctor was summoned immediately, and after examining her, he prescribed complete bed rest for at least 2 weeks. "The baby seems healthy," he assured them, "but we need to be cautious. No exertion of any kind, Mrs. Nash." The prospect of remaining in bed while the household needed her attention filled Olivia with dismay, but Quentin was adamant. "Your health and the baby's come first," he insisted. "We'll manage everything else." And manage they did, but not alone. To Olivia's astonishment, women from town began arriving at the ranch, bringing meals, offering to help with laundry and cleaning, and sitting with her during the long days of confinement. Mrs. Peterson, the banker's wife who had once been among her harshest critics, organized a rotation of helpers. The minister's wife brought books and gossip to keep her entertained. Even the formidable widow Johnson, who owned the town's only hotel, appeared with a handmade quilt for the coming baby. "I don't understand," Olivia confessed to Quentin one evening as he sat beside her bed, reading aloud from a novel she enjoyed. "These same women wouldn't give me the time of day when I first arrived in Cripple Creek." Quentin set the book aside, taking her hand in his. "People can change, Olivia. You've shown them what true strength and character look like. They respect that, even if they were slow to recognize it. Or perhaps they just feel sorry for me now," she suggested wryly. "No," he said firmly. "It's more than pity, it's admiration. The way you've created a home for children who needed one, the way you've faced every challenge with grace, that commands respect." Olivia wasn't entirely convinced, but the kindness of the townswomen during her confinement did heal some of the hurt she had carried since those early days of rejection. By September, the doctor declared her out of danger, though he still advised caution. Gradually, she resumed some of her duties, though the family insisted on protecting her from any strenuous work. Michael, now walking confidently and beginning to form words, became her constant companion, bringing her small treasures he found around the house and garden. As her November due date approached, preparations intensified. The nursery that had been Michael's was refreshed with new curtains sewn by Emma, and a cradle that Quentin had ordered from a craftsman in Denver. William and Henry constructed a rocking horse as a gift for both the new baby and Michael, while Samuel collected soft feathers to fill a special pillow. On the first day of November, as the first serious snow of the season blanketed the ranch, Olivia's labor began. Unlike with Michael, when she had been alone and terrified in a small boarding house room, this time she was surrounded by loved ones. Mrs. Wilkins and Emma took charge of the younger children, keeping them occupied and reassured. The doctor arrived promptly, having been staying in town in anticipation of the birth. And Quentin refused to leave her side, holding her hand through each contraction, wiping her brow, and murmuring encouragement. After 6 hours of labor, mercifully shorter than her experience with Michael, Olivia gave birth to a healthy baby girl with a shock of dark hair and her father's determined chin. As the doctor placed the squalling infant in her arms, Olivia felt a wave of love so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. "She's perfect," Quentin whispered, his voice choked with emotion as he gazed down at his daughter. "Just like her mother." They named her Elizabeth Grace Nash, honoring both Quentin's first wife and the grace that had brought them all together as a family. When the children were finally allowed to come in and meet their new sister, their awe and delight completed Olivia's happiness. The following weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and joyful discoveries as they adjusted to life with a newborn again. Michael, now 14 months old, was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to touch her and bring her his toys. The older children took turns helping with both babies, proud of their role as big brothers and sister. Christmas that year was especially meaningful, their first as a complete family. The house was decorated with evergreen boughs and red ribbons, the scent of pine mingling with the aroma of gingerbread and roasting turkey. Gifts were simple but thoughtful, many of them handmade. The children performed a nativity play they had been rehearsing for weeks, with Samuel proudly playing Joseph and Emma serving as narrator. As they gathered around the fire after the younger children were in bed, Elizabeth sleeping peacefully in her cradle nearby, Olivia looked around at the faces of her family. Quentin's strong, gentle features softened by firelight, William's thoughtful expression as he sketched the scene in his notebook, Henry quietly strumming his fiddle, Emma knitting with the concentration of a much older woman. "What are you thinking, love?" Quentin asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "I was thinking about that night in the rain," she replied softly. "When you found me with nowhere to go, when everyone in town had judged me unfit to raise my child alone. One of the best decisions I ever made," he said, squeezing her hand. "Bringing you home. They were wrong, you know," she continued. "I could have raised Michael alone. I would have found a way eventually." She paused, meeting his gaze. "But this is so much better. Not because I needed saving, but because together we've created something beautiful. A real family." "The best kind of family," Quentin agreed. "One built on choice and love, not just circumstance." As the new year dawned, bringing with it fresh possibilities and challenges, the Nash family stood strong in their love for one another. The ranch continued to prosper, the children grew and learned, and Olivia and Quentin's partnership deepened with each passing season. Occasionally, newcomers to Cripple Creek would hear whispers about Mrs. Nash's past, about the unwed mother who had once been turned away from every decent establishment in town. But these whispers were inevitably countered by stories of the exemplary family at the Broken Spur Ranch, of the children who thrived under Olivia and Quentin's care, of the couple whose love had created a haven for those who needed one. And in the years to come, as Michael and Elizabeth were joined by two more siblings, twin boys named James and Robert, and the older children began to make their own way in the world, the story of Olivia and Quentin Nash became something of a legend in the small mining town. Not because it was extraordinary, but because it demonstrated an essential truth that many had forgotten. That family is defined not by convention or blood, but by love, commitment, and the courage to see beyond society's narrow judgments. For Olivia, who had once stood alone in the rain with her infant son, the Broken Spur Ranch became more than just a home. It became the embodiment of the second chance she had never dared to hope for. And for Quentin, the woman whom others had deemed unfit to raise a child became the heart of the family they raised together, proving that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the most unlikely beginnings.